For more on the drought conditions in the region, let's bring in Chief Meteorologist Matt Safino. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Evan, as we just heard, it is a very, very complex thing, drought. And there's really no one definition. It depends on the user and it depends on the region as well. So we'll go through where we are right now and where we've been because it can change. Drought is a long-term event, if you will, or a long-term condition that we monitor to give us an indication as to, okay, how are we doing water-wise in the long term? And here's where we are right now. For the Willamette Valley, you can see it's considered moderate drought on the drought index, but it hasn't always been this way for the entire year. And we're surrounded by an area that is simply abnormally dry, which isn't a drought condition at all. Same thing in northeast Oregon, same thing for a good part of western Washington. And where you see no color at all, there's no drought conditions anywhere. Southern Oregon actually did quite well this winter. So how does that compare to where we've been? Well, let's take a look at this a year ago. And you can see that Oregon was pretty much the entire state was in a moderate drought. Same thing for Washington, a few areas in central Washington getting into what we consider severe drought. That was a year ago. Then we go to 6 months ago, much improved because we had a wet fall and we had a wet early winter. We had some dry time in the month of January, but it picked up again in February. So 6 months ago, we were doing a lot better. And 3 months ago, had no drought in Oregon at all. So you can see how it changes in 3-month increments here. And then currently, this is the map I just showed you, we've got some moderate or abnormally dry conditions in parts of Oregon. So again, it's a long-term conditions that we monitor to give us a read as to how much moisture we have or don't have. And if you look at the numbers on this, at least for Portland, and this is pretty indicative of all of western Oregon, it's really the last 2 months. And what's today, the 7th? The last 2 months and today's the 6th. The last 2 months and 6 days where we've been dry. April, we only had an inch of rain. That's just 35% of average. May, 1.92 inches of rain. That's just 76% of average. So since April 1st, we're running at about 50% of average. Now, these are not our wettest months of the year, but still, those deficits matter. Better to do it in April and May than, say, in December and January when we get a whole lot more of our precipitation for the entire year. I mean, if you think about it, we get about 80% of our annual precipitation between November and March here in the Northwest. So again, it's been these last 2 months that have sent us into the abnormally dry and moderate drought conditions here in the Northwest and especially west of the Cascades. So let's take a closer look now where we are for the month of June, the early month of June, the first 6 days. And we're running a little bit below average, but that's not a lot in terms of absolute amounts of rain. It's just a quarter of an inch below average. So, we've got time to make this up. However, we are going into the summer months, of course, as you know, and we don't get very much rain at all through June, July, August, and September. This is our dry season. That's why the rain in the other parts of the year matter so much. Evan?
Yeah, so Matt, so a drier spring, how does that affect what we might see this summer, wildfires, anything like that?
You want to get a wet spring in terms of wildfire mostly because it will delay the drying out of the forest and hopefully delay the onset of fires. But we've had big fires in wet years. We've had big fires in dry years. We're going to dry out because we're going into our dry season. And the wildfire situation really comes down to two things: when and where we get lightning and human behavior, which of course is completely unpredictable. Most wildfires now are started by humans as opposed to lightning.
Got it. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.